So Peter, just moving on to another topic, I gather you're involved in the divorce market. Now, I've not heard anyone use that term before, so tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Well, Hunter, as a financial advisor for 50 years, I met a lot of people who had been through divorce or were going through divorce. And what I learned was that there was no one there to help them do it. Sure, there were lawyers, but nobody knew questions to ask the lawyer or how to approach it or what is a divorce, how does it actually work, what's involved and the like. And when I retired, I decided that I would do something about this. And so we have developed a checklist which allows people to buy the checklist at quite a reasonable price and to look at all aspects of what they need to know to go through a divorce. It's not an advice document. It's a document which has all the information that is necessary. So it's all about the legal issues, accounting issues, financial issues, and we even touch on a few emotional issues as well. You see, most people go along, say, to a lawyer, and the lawyer spends maybe 2 or 3 hours explaining to them very basic information and maybe charging $500 an hour to do it.
Yeah.
We've included that information in the divorce checklist. Because it just seems silly to me that people pay to find out basic information.
Yeah.
But there are so many aspects of divorce, such as all the financial issues. If you're in business, for example, what are the issues that you should be talking to your accountant about? What are the issues you should be aware of as far as fraud is concerned, or dishonest activities, or whatever the case may be of your partner? What happens as far as all your superannuation and your life insurance and income protection and everything else? All these needs to be sorted out and sorted out properly. And it's not something you can guess. You can't just guess what to do. Do-it-yourself involvement in this usually ends up in a disaster. In fact, the lawyers will tell you that people who decide to do it themselves end up talking to lawyers because they get into a mess. And so it's a lot easier to do it properly, and we have a checklist which allows people to know about all the things they have to talk to their lawyer, accountant, financial advisor about.
And in your experience, what are the sort of 1 or 2 things that seem to be the most common issues that people run into? So in that checklist, what were sort of some hidden secrets that you passed on to people that they didn't know about?
Well, in Australia, there's about 2 to 3 million people a year are affected by divorce.
Right.
So, husband and wife, for example, and not only that, but de factos are also involved in the Family Law Act. Now, that's not something that is commonly known. But people have been in the de facto for 3 or 5 years, and they say, well, see you later, we've had enough and we're moving on. They really should go through the settlement process.
Right.
Now, if they don't, one of the partners can come back, say within a 2-year period, and say, excuse me, Hunter, I'd like half your assets if you don't mind. And they're entitled to ask for that, even in a de facto relationship. Now we're moving into the same-sex marriage as well. Same issues will apply. Everything's under the Family Law Act. I guess the things that I've learned are ignorance is a prime concern when it comes to divorce. Most people just wing it. And I hear of people who don't actually divorce for years. They might settle, they might get rid of the cash side of things, but they don't divorce. Now, if they die in the meantime, they're not divorced. And so the surviving partner has access to their assets. Often people don't change the beneficiaries under their superannuation fund, and so their ex-partner gets it. So even people who have divorced and settled years ago, they suddenly find out that their ex is involved as a beneficiary under their superannuation fund. And there's nothing that the courts can do about that. Nothing. Because it's a preferred benefit that they have decided to undertake many, many years ago, and nobody's changed it, so it's still a preferred benefit.
Got it.
The other thing is that there are many aspects of a financial interest that somebody might have, which is generally not discussed. For example, I remember when I went through a divorce, they weren't at all interested in frequent flyer accounts. Well, if you've got 1 million frequent flyer points with Qantas, that's 4 business class trips around the world. Now, should that be in the settlement? Yes, it should. Or it might be a multitude of economy trips around the world. But that's sort of forgotten. We won't worry about that. But it goes on with a lot of other things too. For example, you've got a book. There's an intellectual property component attached to that. And that should also be taken into account in any divorce proceeding. So what is the intellectual property that a person has developed over a period of time, which is continuing to bring in income year after year after year? That should be in the divorce settlement as well. There are many things that people completely forget about.
Yeah, got it. So where would somebody find this checklist if they wanted to access it?
They can find it on divorcedirectory.com.au or divorcechecklist.com.au. So there's a couple of ways they can do it.
Okay, awesome.
And it's not expensive. I mean, it's $99. But in there, it could save them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, especially when you take into account that most people don't do their divorce correctly. And so they could find out in this checklist that there are many items which have been ignored in their own mind but should be taken into account in divorce. So you buy the checklist, it's your checklist, we don't make anything else out of it, there's no kickbacks, nobody else gets any other benefits, it's just $99 and the document is yours. And so when you go along to your accountant, to your lawyer, financial planner, you've got all the questions you want to ask them. So they're not driving it, you're driving it. And that's a very different approach to divorce.
Excellent. Peter, thanks for sharing your information on the divorce checklist.
Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
Good, bye.